YouTube fam, how's it going? It's your boy Jeff Rosado, and I'm back at it again with another sorcery deck tech. So today I have the Deathspeaker. There's so many ways to play Deathspeaker. Lately, I know that a lot of people play air and fire, and that's probably the best way to play this. However, today I have a water-fire based Deathspeaker deck, and I'm very happy to present it to you guys. So getting right on into it, I think it's probably best that I start off with my artifacts. So starting off right off the bat, we have one Erik's Curiosa. Yes, that's right, Erik's Curiosa itself. And yeah, to be honest, hold off until the very end where I review the deck, and I'll explain more why I play this card. So for starters, yeah, we just play the one. We're playing one Aquamarine Core, one Ruby Core, and one Philo Stone. Now, of course, if you were playing a budget build, this is a 42 card deck, and part of the reason is that I'm still trying to debate on what the card choices can be. However, if you can't afford these, just don't play them. Play any other two cards that would be more to your liking, and, you know, play around with a few things. So we also have the two mixes. We have the Mix Ignis and Mix Aqua. There's a lot of controversy around these cards, whether or not if they're good enough to be a part of the Alchemy 9. For those of you who don't know, the Philosopher Stone, the 4 cores, and the 4 mixes are all a part of the Alchemy 9. And I don't know if that really mixed well with me. No pun intended. No, but seriously, these cards, they are very powerful in the fact of what they're trying to do. So for 1 mana, you sacrifice the mix, and it gives you 3 mana of its corresponding element. And for the spell that you're trying to cast with it, you don't have to worry about its threshold requirements, which is pretty insane. You know, these cards really remind me a lot like Black Lotus in Magic the Gathering. I mean, everyone knows what Black Lotus is, right? I mean, sure, this costs 1 mana instead of 0, but sacrificing it for 3 mana is the key here. And with a 2-element style deck, these cards can actually ramp out the game pretty early. Now, there are some cases where these cards actually are kind of dead, but to be fair, I think that really just goes down to timing, really. See, because you can have this in play, but may not have a corresponding card to cast. So, like, for example, I can have all fire cards in my hand, so this Mix Aqua is kind of a little awkward. So, they're really powerful in certain situations. Now, getting on into my last artifact, I'm playing another card that I haven't seen a lot of people play, and that's the Immortal Throne. So the Immortal Throne is a win condition in its own right. Essentially how this card works is whenever a player plays a card, if it has the same amount of mana in its cost as the number of counters on the Immortal Throne, then the Immortal Throne gets a counter, and then you get to draw a card. And the best part is that if an avatar is alone on the Immortal Throne, when the Immortal Throne has 8 counters, you win the game. So it's a draw engine, it's an auto win condition, and yeah, a lot of people aren't really optimizing this card. This card has a lot of potential. So, getting on into my minions here, I have 4 Violent. Violent is just great. I mean, having the Genesis ability, whenever it comes in play to deal 2 damage to an adjacent unit, is just really good. It's really good for just pinging off minions with 2 power or less, and it's also really great with Deathspeaker. Because you see, the thing is Deathspeaker allows us to cast 1 minion per turn in either graveyard. The minion will get banished. However, the main use for Deathspeaker is that if it brings back a minion with Genesis, you can reactivate the Genesis ability, regardless if the card stays on the field or not. And Violent is just really great for that. So you can dish out 2 damage, you can attack with it. If it dies, you can bring it back with the Deathspeaker and then dish out another 2 damage, further gaining value. Now, if we're on Death's Door, that's even better, because Deathspeaker allows us to cast any minion for free. So we also have 4 Deep-Sea Mermaid. Deep-Sea Mermaid is essentially a water apprentice wizard. It doesn't have Spellcaster, it has Submerge, and with its Genesis ability, when it enters play, you draw the bottom card of your deck. It's very interesting. There's neat little interactions with this, especially with mulliganing. Like if you put cards on the bottom of your deck and redraw your hand, Deep-Sea Mermaids is great because now you know what's at the bottom of your deck and you can redraw it. And yeah, neat little interaction with that card. These are really card tech choices and you don't really have to play these, but I've been really satisfied with their performance lately. So I have 1 Captain Baldassare and then 3 Sea Raiders. The Sea Raider, whenever it attacks and kills an enemy, the controller discards the top card of their deck, and you can cast that card this turn, ignoring Threshold. Captain Baldassare essentially does the same thing, but it's only whenever he attacks a unit or a site, which is like way better, because most of the time, this guy has to kill something that's less than 3 to get its effect off, while Captain Baldassare just needs to attack a site to get its effect off. And why this is huge is because, well, we're casting our opponent's cards. And this is kind of the idea of the deck, is that we're trying to just gain value off of everything. So we play these Genesis abilities, gaining value. When things die, we get the Deathspeaker to revive them and gain value again. And then with these pirates, quote unquote, these can steal your opponent's cards, giving us further value. And that's really sweet. I mean, just being able to take your opponent's best cards and use it against them, it's a very satisfying feeling. So I have 1 Ruler of Thul and 1 Lord of Unland. Ruler of Thul is just really good. He has charge, and essentially allies can move from the top and bottom of the realm as if they were connected. And all of your allies occupying those zones get an extra power. Now, Lord of Unland provides an extra power to all your minions as long as they're occupying a body of water in the same body of water as Lord of Unland. So a body of water is essentially a collection of water sites. So picture if you have water sites in these 4 zones, but all the sites around them aren't water sites. This entire zone in these 4 locations are the body of water. So if you have a Lord of Unland here, all your other minions will get 1 power, and it's really sweet. So we have 2 Selfsame Simulacrum, curving out our 4s here. But it's also just really good because when this comes in play, it comes in play as a copy of another minion. And that's sweet because we can have it come in play as a copy of Deep-Sea Mermaids or the Violent and get more Genesis effects. Or we can even copy more Sea Raiders, or we can copy any of our lords that are just giving our minions more power. It's really sweet. But what's really sweet about it is also with Deathspeaker. See, the thing is we can bring back the Selfsame Simulacrum with Deathspeaker. And we can have this come in play as a copy of a nearby minion with Genesis. So if we have a Deep-Sea Mermaids in play, we bring the Selfsame Simulacrum as a copy of it. It will get banished because of Deathspeaker. However, you will get the Genesis ability to draw the bottom card of your deck, which is pretty sweet. It's just such a great card curving out the 4 mana here. So going into our 5 drops, I play the almighty, super powerful Courtesan Thais. If you guys don't know what this card does, you guys need to check it real quick, because this card is probably going to boom everywhere for any deck that can play it. This card's bonkers. It has a Genesis ability. When it comes in play, during their next turn, each player is controlled by the previous player. So essentially, when this comes in play, you can gain control of your opponent. And on your turn, yes, your opponent can gain control of you. But why this card is insane is that you can control them first, and it just messes up the game so much. We want to try and gain value with our minions, and we also want to disrupt our opponent and steal their cards. In my opinion, Courtesan Thais is a perfect pirate because not only does she essentially steal your opponent's cards, but she steals games. I mean, what could be better than that? Like, I mean, whenever you play this card, I mean, it shifts the game dramatically, and then having the Selfsame Simulacrum as well to copy it gives you more Courtesan Thais triggers. And of course, since it has Genesis, we can bring it back with Deathspeaker, getting more triggers. It's pretty insane. So, Mother Nature here. At the start of your turn, you reveal your top spell, and if it happens to be a minion, you can summon it to the location of Mother Nature. And this is pretty sweet, because let's say you play Mother Nature, triggering the Immortal Throne, drawing a card, and let's say on your turn, you happen to, specifically, let's say a 7-drop like this Ancient Dragon here. See, the Immortal Throne, it triggers whenever a card is played. So even if you bring it back with Boneyard, or even if you cheat it into play with something like Mother Nature, as long as it has the corresponding mana to the counters on the Immortal Throne, you'll still get the trigger and you'll draw a card. It's insane value. For our other 6, we have an Infernal Legion. I'm really only just playing this because I didn't know what other 6 drop to play. And this card actually surprises me. At the end phase of your turn, it deals 3 damage to each other adjacent unit. I actually played this when my opponent was on death's door, and his ability actually won me the game at the end phase. It's a mandatory effect, so like there's a chance that it can hit your other minions as well. But, you know, if you play it accordingly, then you won't have anything to worry about. Of course, we have the Ancient Dragon for our 7-drop. It's airborne, and being able to tap it to deal 4 damage to a unit at target location nearby is just crazy. For just a 6 power airborne minion, it's really strong. What's also really strong is this Death Dealer here. Our last 7-drop and a powerful Genesis ability. Its ability is kill all other minions when it enters play. It's just nuts. So you can essentially play this, destroy everything in play. If it dies, you have the Deathspeaker to bring it back, destroy it again. And we have other cards in here to bring it back as well. And playing the Selfsame only just generates more copies. I play the one Great Old One. You don't have to play an 8-drop for the Immortal Throne. However, I really like this card for just the sheer fact that if I'm playing mixes, I can make it cost less. It's 16 power, and it permanently floods the realm, which is great. We really want to flood as many sites as we can for benefit, and you'll see why later. Going on into our spells, I am playing 1 Plague of Frogs. So Plague of Frogs is a very unique card, no pun intended. So it summons 7 frog tokens. So the frog tokens are essentially 0 power and they have Submerge. And making 7 of them can be pretty insane. Of course, it just guarantees that you have 7 blockers. But if you happen to have Ruler of Thul, or if you happen to have Lord of Unland, you can potentially make those tokens stronger. And the fact that you make 7 of them, even if all of them gain a buff from that, that's 7 extra power you got. And this card only costs 1 mana. Like, what in the world? I just love it for the 1-drop and the curve for the Immortal Throne. We played 2 Firebolts. I needed some room for some extra sort of removal, but removal in a way where I can deal damage. See, because this can also end the game too if your opponent's on death's door, if the timing's right. It's also just really good for just taking out minions. You can dish out 3 damage to a minion and then guarantee that the Sea Raider will most likely kill that minion. And then you can cast the card from your opponent's deck once it does finish the job. So playing 2 Disintegrate, just really good for just getting rid of big minions. It banishes a target minion nearby and everything it carries, which is sweet. So if you're having a minion that's souped up with artifacts and weapons, this essentially just gets rid of all of it. So Deathspeaker is unfortunately the only minion or the only spellcaster that can really activate the Disintegrate, but that's okay. Any minion that's threatening the Deathspeaker will have to pay the price for this. Another insane card, an overplayed card, is Infiltrate. It gains control of a target enemy minion. It is tapped, and you gain control of it until it takes damage. But the best part is that the card gains stealth. So essentially, you don't have to worry about your opponent targeting it until you make an action with it. But just being able to steal your opponent's minions, it's phenomenal. And of course, being able to attack with them is just as good, right? So, play 3 Stormy Seas. I think that Cave-In and Stormy Seas are almost staples in a lot of decks. Especially in this deck, when we can flood the realm, or if we play a lot of islands, more than likely our opponent's going to walk onto one of our water sites and we can forcefully submerge it. And this card can also be pretty wild too. If your opponent's avatar happens to be on a water site and they have all these sweet artifacts equipped to it, yeah, the Stormy Seas will submerge all of them. And you never know. With cards like Great Old One and Deep-Sea Mermaids, if they're submerged, you can go ahead and pick up those artifacts and reuse them again. Yeah, it's a really good removal spell. You can even hit multiple targets with it, and it's just crazy. The last card we have in our deck is actually the other 5 slot. It is in the form of an aura, and it's Atlantean Fate. So Atlantean Fate is just another board sweep, and that's kind of the idea of this deck. Like, we want to play things, we want to kill things, and then we want to bring it back with Deathspeaker to gain value. So having Atlantean Fate just does just that. It floods any sites that it's on. It actually also negates all the effects on those sites as long as they're not ordinary. Its Genesis ability submerges all minions and all artifacts in the sites that it's occupying. So it's literally a board sweep. It's pretty crazy. Playing all of these cards with the mixes is just really great because it allows you to get these powerful minions out faster. You can also, like, again, just gain value off of your minions, or you can gain value off of your opponent's minions. And that's kind of ideally what this deck wants to do. Getting on to our Atlas here. Play one Tadpole Pool and one Vesuvius. It's a hit or miss for me because the threshold requirements are a little high. And if you draw these early in the game, it's kind of a little awkward. But they're really good though, because Vesuvius, you can sacrifice it to deal 3 damage to everything nearby. And for Tadpole Pool, if you play it, it has a Genesis ability that allows you to summon 3 frog tokens submerged underneath it. Again, more bodies. If you play this with a Plague of Frogs and Ruler of Thul, you can essentially build up a mini army out of nowhere, and it can kind of take the game out of hand. So we're playing one Boneyard. It fits the theme with the Deathspeaker. I mean, just being able to summon a minion back from your cemetery and being able to gain its Genesis ability is key. Now, there's also a neat little interaction here where you can use Deathspeaker to bring back your opponent's minions. If they have Genesis abilities or not, the whole point is that you're banishing those minions afterwards. And when you play the Boneyard, if you play your cards correctly, you might be able to be the only person that gains the value off this Boneyard. And that's ideally what you want to do. You want to play this when you have minions in your cemetery and your opponent doesn't. And yeah, you just want to be able to revive them back. And again, I found out that this card works with the Immortal Throne. So you can essentially play this. If you have the Immortal Throne at no counters, right? You play this, and now since it has 0 mana cost, it'll get its first counter. You'll draw a card. But if you happen to revive a minion back, and let's say if it had 1 mana cost, then you would be able to trigger the throne again to draw a card, etc. It's really good in that sense, and just gaining value off of bringing back your minions. So we have Roots of Yggdrasil. This card is pretty crazy too. If it's destroyed, it destroys everything. I mean, enough said about that. Mirror Realm is great. This comes in play as a copy of any of our sites, so we can potentially gain more Genesis triggers off of our sites, and we can also copy our opponent's sites if they're like really good in that situation. It's also good is Sinkhole, and these cards kind of almost combo well with each other. See, you can play Sinkhole, and I mean, I've talked about Sinkhole forever. Like, this card and Courtesan Thais are just ridiculous, right? So Sinkhole, you can spend its mana that turn, sacrifice it, destroy a site, and then create rubble. Mirror Realm can potentially come and play as a copy of Sinkhole, giving you almost 3 copies of it. And what gets crazier is that you can use your own Sinkhole to blow up your own sites. And if you use this to destroy the Roots of Yggdrasil, then bam, you destroy everything with just those sites. It gets pretty out of hand. Like, I'm almost always going to play these 4 cards in every deck if I'm playing Sinkhole. Like, it's just insane. Like, you almost kind of want to play them to gain the value. Play 3 Oasis. Dual site for our elements. Enough said about that. I play 2 Floodplain. This almost ensures that we can flood another site. So if our opponent has Root Spider specifically, and if it's burrowed, and if we flood that site, we get rid of the Root Spider. And this is just a really good counter for that. You'll expect to run into Root Spider every now and then. But it's also really good for flooding a site, so then we can use Stormy Seas to forcefully submerge any minion or any artifact that we flooded. For the rest of the sites, I'm playing 3 Winter River. All the rivers have the same ability where when they come in play, you look at your next spell and you can choose to put it on top or bottom. And then lastly, we just have 5 Deserts. These work really well with Violent. I mean, being able to play it to deal 1 damage to any nearby minion is really sweet. And also, whenever you play the Vile Imp, it's dishing out another 2 damage, so you can almost guarantee 3 damage from playing those 2 at the same turn. That's really just it for the Atlas. Of course, you can make other changes as well to this deck, and I highly recommend that you do so. Experiment with cards that work well for you. So, Erik's Curiosa. Why I play it? Well, honestly, let me just show you. why I play it. So this card has the ability to rip this card up into pieces and draw a card from your collection. Oh man, I can't believe I'm about to do this, but let's try to keep our cool. Let's try to get this card out of the sleeve. Gosh. Alright. Gosh, I can't believe I'm about to do this. Alright, well, here we go. So yeah, you activate the Erik's Curiosa, and essentially what you do here is, well, you rip it into pieces. Did I do something wrong? Bonk. Oh, okay. I guess it worked. Sweet. So here's my collection, and yeah, I'm just gonna go through it, and I can pick any of these cards that go into my hand, whichever one I use. Well, I guess I probably should have ripped the card up when I was in the game and not while recording a video. Oops. Bonk. Okay, in all seriousness though, there's no actual way that I will ever play this card in a tournament sense. Oh my god, I can't believe I'm doing this. So this is my real Erik's Curiosa. I'm probably never going to actually play this card, and I guess that's the joke of it. I mean, seriously, I made a post stating that I think that this is the most powerful spell in Sorcery, and here's my validation for that. So, okay, this is a 1-mana artifact, right? Even with the rip effect, this card allows you to draw any card from your collection. That could be removal, that could be more draw, it can be an aggressive spell, it could be Alchemy 9. Like, I mean, honestly, the options are endless, and it's all based on your collection, right? But what's crazy is that this card also gets over the rarity restriction. So, yeah, you can only have one Philo Stone in your deck, but if you have Erik's Curiosa, and if you happen to activate this to go get a Philo Stone, then you get over the rarity restriction, and you can essentially play 2. And that's just bonkers. It's actually insane. I mean, there's so many interactions you can use with this. You can get it to, let's say, get another Sinkhole. You can use the Sinkhole, blow up your opponent's site. At the same time, play this with the first Sinkhole's mana. Sacrifice this to go ahead and grab the other Sinkhole, and then play it for the next turn, and then disrupt your opponent. You can obviously go for strong minions like Courtesan Thais, Ancient Dragon, I mean, Pudge Butcher, literally anything that you want. Ripping the card is an obvious weakness to the card. Besides that, I mean, sitting on it, and, I mean, if your opponent does happen to have, like, Courtesan Thais or removal for it, then yeah, I mean, this card for sure can have weaknesses. And I guess this card can only be as powerful as your collection. But, I mean, think about it. The bigger your collection is, the more options you have. And the more copies of this card that you have, well, the more activations you get to use, and the more usages you have. In short, this card literally can access any card. I don't really see anyone ripping this card up, unfortunately. If they're in the final round of a big tournament and they really need that card for an out, then they can go ahead and do it. But the downside of that is awful cards like Courtesan Thais. See, the thing is that you can definitely showcase your Erik's Curiosa in a game. You can certainly have it and not activate it. But if your opponent plays something like Courtesan Thais on your turn, they technically can rip up your card. Of course, they have to give you the chance to surrender before that happens, but that doesn't make it any fun. It really doesn't. And in a competitive sense, you are meant to rip this card to activate its ability, unfortunately. But for friendly, this card's power is unbound. It's actually ridiculous. This was just as a friendly gesture. I wanted to make a little joke. That being said, you shouldn't use proxies for tournaments, nor you shouldn't proxy cards to pass for the real thing, especially for value sakes, because there's some people that will actually proxy cards and then sell them, and that's just very bad. You never want to do that, especially when you're playing in a tournament. You never want to play with fake cards because you're just cheating at that point, right? But proxies can be helpful. Your friends, your family, and even people in your community, if they allow you to use proxies, then that's another story. And not everyone can afford expensive cards. Like, I mean, I literally have people comment all the time that I'm playing with these powerful artifacts. And the point of me showcasing these is that you can play them at their optimal, but you shouldn't like have to worry about having these cards or not. And as a matter of fact, again, not everyone can afford these cards, but I think it's helpful and very healthy to know what cards that are worth investing for, especially in competitive play. And it's absolutely vital to test play your decks before investing into them. Part of the reason why I made this channel too is to showcase my deck profiles, to get you guys knowing what decks to afford, what cards to play, and what cards that work out well. I made this joke to lighten the mood, but to also inform everyone that you shouldn't be ashamed of being rich or poor. And of course, if you can afford a card, then you should be proud of that. But if you can't afford a card, then that's okay too. And you shouldn't be judged for printing out a card to test play with your friends and family. If you want to feel the thrill of ripping the card, you can resort to a proxy, or you can politely establish that after you use the card, you banish it, so that way you don't have to use it afterwards. And selling the card as a real thing is just not okay, and you shouldn't be doing that. We all have to come together and join forces in this community to help each other out, and to also make it healthy for new players. If you're just playing like an Erik's Curiosa for fun, and you want the thrill of ripping it up, then you know what, I think that that's okay. I noticed that a lot of people aren't playing this card, and I think that is just in fear of just losing the card itself. I mean, this card is not cheap, and it is very hard to find. The idea is that you actually rip up the card, and I mean, again, for a card that is very hard to come by and that you don't have multiple copies of, like, I mean, this is literally my only copy. If I had multiple copies, I would definitely be tempted to use it in a tournament, because why not? It's such a powerful card. I don't see any content creators, any leagues that are actually playing this card. I could be wrong. I wanted to get everyone curious on ways to play this card. No one says that you have to play this. It definitely just catches my curiosity. No pun intended. There's tons of reason to play it. I mean, for example, its artwork. Its artwork gets me so curious. All of these trinkets, are they treasures? Are they long-lost memories of the past? Or are they hints of what's yet to come in Sorcery's future? One thing is certain. This card is extremely powerful. It's so powerful that people are scared to even play it. I hope that you guys enjoyed this deck list. Make as many changes as you want to it. Make it your own and enjoy the game as it was meant to be played. Be safe. Don't make proxies for profit or trying to cheat, because that's not cool. If you're making it for fun and doing things like this, where you can make a silly YouTube video on showcasing a card that no one plays, you can do that. And that's okay. Well, guys, that's all I have for you. I hope that you enjoyed this deck list. Sorry I went on a rant. I hope that you guys look forward to more content. Please like, comment, subscribe, and share. And most importantly, guys, have a great week. I'll catch you later on the next one.